Hungry Trilobyte podcast would like to start by acknowledging Soonercon. Set sail once again for the high seas of Oklahoma's longest-running pop culture convention. A fun weekend awaits you full of cosplay, shopping, celebrity autographs, panels, and the after-hours events. Set up in the Embassy Suites in Norman, Oklahoma, you'll find a fantastic geeky weekend, June 19th through 21st, 2026. Visit Soonercon.com for details. On tap today, we have Dan Henk. How are you doing, good sir?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Good to see you. I am really excited to talk about this because I saw this Kickstarter you have up with this anthology project you have going, and I really think that, especially for my horror-based listeners, this is something they're going to want to check out. So it's called Down the Highways in the Dark.
Right.
And it's a collection. It's called an illustrated novel. So it's mostly text-based, but it does delve deep into comic and horror art.
Yes. Yeah, I originally wanted to do comic books, and what really sold me was like the Alan Moore and the Frank Miller stuff. You know, it's like it's kind of like dark, complex stories with like gritty artwork. I was like, yeah, I want to do that. But when I finally interviewed with DC Comics, it's like that's kind of when all the comics were like going bankrupt. So they only wanted the superheroes. So like, I want to do stuff other than that. So I mean, since then I've done a lot of stuff, but I also kind of realized that I don't really enjoy drawing storyboards. Like, you know, he goes down the hall, he opens the door, or whatever. I enjoy drawing like cool stuff. You know, so I did like some of the most dramatic scenes. I tried to like highlight those in the novels with like illustrations from all the people that inspired me, like Frank Miller and John Tolban and all of Wally Wood, all those people did like great drawings that really brought stuff to life. So yeah, that was my intent.
Sure. And like if you were to step away from comics where you get illustration and art for every moment of every scene, and you have almost a fluid motion of the action going on, a lot of times illustration can take on the effect of being, say, like in an anthology magazine where you're getting one key illustration that encaptures the mood of the piece. And sometimes that's better at bringing the reader into kind of the world you want to build for them.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I read a lot of that stuff growing up. Like, big surprise, I'm old. So I recall when we didn't have like the Facebook and MySpace on the internet and stuff. So I read a lot of like the early pulp magazines and stuff where they had that stuff that really brought it to life. So it was drawings and text. Like they don't seem to do that so much anymore, but they used to do that all the time.
Yeah, and you would have a collaboration between authors and illustrators, sometimes intentionally, sometimes the publication would set it up for you, and both of those led to some very interesting results. But you'll have cases where you find people who just maybe they wanted to make a movie or a show, or they just had the idea in mind and it just worked better in text. They could bring somebody in, and sometimes the actual imagery just becomes iconic.
Yeah, one of the things that I learned too in my writing career was like what people make up in their head is often better for their own personal journey to the story than if I illustrate all of it. So like maybe if I do every little connecting piece, I have one vision, but maybe they have another vision that makes it stronger for them. So yeah, I think it really helps to have like those iconic scenes that like draw the biggest, most important, impactful images, to life. But all the like interconnecting stuff, I think it's better if people think it up themselves.
Is there a certain piece in this anthology that kind of drove the whole project that maybe was kind of the linchpin or something that just said, hey, we can put an entire book out of this one story?
Well, I mean, there's in a way there kind of is, in a way there kind of isn't. Like, so the way that there kind of is it? I would say like I've always had this concept of like going beyond like human life, like being able to like make like robot bodies and stuff like that. So I even did a science project with that stuff. I was like in the science fair with like my early version of a robot body. So then when I read like Watchmen and Dark Knight, and as like my thinking evolved, I was like, yeah, why don't I make that into a story? But like I know our technology is not there, but I'll bet it is in alien races. So I kind of like brought that into it, and then I brought a lot of elements of my life, like like I'd say my life's been a pretty rocky road, like brain cancer, my wife dying, getting in fights with crackheads, getting my tendons severed, stuff. So I was like, I'll bring in stuff like that and like just kind of bring it to life and add in this like alien element of stuff that doesn't really exist, but I want to exist. And so I put all that together, and I felt like that was the strongest story. So it's kind of like a story that I've had forever, but it's steadily evolved over time.
Sure. And the things you, excuse me, the obstacles you mentioned in your life, the things that added difficulty and trauma and struggle to it, that's going to come out because you're actually infusing real human emotion and human struggle into the story of aliens and the otherworldly. And a lot of times we like to use science fiction and fantasy as kind of a way of wrapping our brain around the things that we can't process in our own world. And I know I'm very guilty of that, so I'm not trying to put shade on anybody.
No, I don't take it the wrong way at all. Yeah, it's like so. As a little kid, I remember I'd read a lot. And I was really inspired by people like Graham Matheson, I Am Legend guy, and like Walter Simonson, all these people that like would make up all this fantastical stuff. And I was like, I don't. Where am I going to come up with that? I don't know if I have the depth for that sort of stuff. But I mean, you're a kid, So like as time goes by and more stuff piles up, it kind of like it's almost like your brain becomes like a bigger library. So you're like, oh well, that feeds into this. Oh, that feeds into that. And like I tried to make it all over the world and look at ancient ruins and stuff, and like see different cultures and like I've learned a couple of different languages, not fluently, but like a little bit of them. So I feel like it widens your perspective, and so now it's almost like I have too many stories to tell. I can't get them all out. When I was a little kid and I see all these great stories, I was like, where did they come up with this?
Let me ask you this, talking about looking at ancient ruins and I'm looking at some of the art here, and some of it does have a very desolate look to it. And I have to ask, do you think that the world we're in now is set to stay where it is forever, or are we kind of on a downhill slide culturally? And I have a reason for asking this.
Well, also, do you follow Graham Matheson at all?
I know of it, but I mean that's about it.
So his famous quote is he says we're a civilization with amnesia, and like he talks about how like there were probably a couple great civilizations, and then we have like natural disasters, like we used to have meteors strike the earth a lot more, a lot more commonly. Like you find a lot of craters in the ocean and stuff, and he'd say, well, the most advanced civilizations would be on the coast, and that would wipe them out. So the most primitive people would be like inside the continents, and they all have these legends of like much more advanced people bringing them stuff. Like some people say it was gods. Like didn't work out very well for the Native Americans when the Colombians arrived. Like the Italians and the French arrived, and they were like, oh yeah, they're gods. They're gonna bring us stuff. They're good. And it turns out they weren't. But a lot of people have those legends. So I kind of interwove that in my story. Like maybe we're like we don't know our full history, and I think it kind of ties into what's going on today. It's like we're always in change. It's like everything's always very volatile, and I think that there's some good stuff happening, there's some bad stuff happening. It's kind of hard to predict where it will be. I mean, nobody predicted there'd be like iPhones and computers and all that stuff in the 70s. So we'll see. I don't want to throw negative dispersions on it, but at the same time, it's not like I don't have that like overwhelmingly positive bent where I'm like, yeah, everything's gonna be fine.
Sure, and that's kind of where I came from here because I was looking at, again, some of the art depicting some, very grisly scenes and scenes of extreme conflict and despair. And then I'm looking at your hat, and you got a Twilight Zone hat on. And I
One of my
think,
favorite shows.
oh, absolutely. And why is because they could deal with concepts that were like dealing with people showing a lack of hope or feeling like they were on the edge of an abyss culturally, and yet there was a way of infusing a hope into it, like
Right,
almost like you just said, like, we don't know what the future is going to bring, and it might be tough to get there, but it's not a bad thing. You don't have to be scared even if you're scared right now.
right.
And
Yeah,
I kind
I
of see
think
that.
there's like a lot of stuff that like you'd be surprised at how incredibly graphic stuff is. Like I remember seeing like a World War II movie, and a soldier slowly stabs another soldier. It's all him going like, "Oh my god, oh my god!" It's like I really felt it, and it's like, hey, there's some stuff that's like kind of overwhelming, but it really hits hard. But at the same time, you go, maybe that helped me learn something. So I feel like it's kind of like that. Like there's like some really dramatic, like tough to get through scenes, but they help you like move on to the next thing.
Learning is growth, and growth is painful.
Right. Yeah, it's
So
true.
when you're putting somebody in a place of being uncomfortable, you're giving them the opportunity to see hope, you're to see a potential, and to maybe learn why things are the way they are. Like, I know you have a background in punk rock, and that is not an area of expertise for me by any means. But I get that it's coming from a place of being very unhappy, not only specific with authority, but with corrupt authority.
Right.
And then you're seeing what the world that's running us now doesn't like us. And you're just trying to make people aware of that.
Yeah, well, it's also a bit about like trying to be yourself. And then, even though you often have a lot of like people against you, you have a lot of antagonists, you have a lot of pushback. It's like, I'm not trying to like hurt other people. I'm just trying to do my own thing. And how about you leave me alone and I'll leave you alone?
Mhm.
So, I mean, that's a common element in the world. Like I'm mostly libertarian. I think that's, that kind of feeds into it. I'm like, do your thing. Whatever you want to accomplish, don't hurt other people, don't fuck them over, but at the same time, don't let them tell you what to do.
Fair. I again, I'm not a horror guy, and that's something I talk about a lot this time of year because I'm watching all my friends who are horror people get really into stuff.
With
And
Halloween coming up,
I
yeah.
love seeing the excitement. I don't personally join in. I like horror adjacent stuff, but you have that community of people who, like you said, are just being themselves. And the work you're doing here is a way of building into that and empowering it, I'd like to think.
Yeah. Well, and like, I'm a big horror guy, but I like strong stories. And I
Hmm.
feel like a lot of that's missing nowadays, but I feel like a lot of like the classics, like the Richard Matheson, and like he wrote Stir of Echoes, he wrote Hell House, he wrote I Am Legend, or like Stephen King or Lovecraft. It's like very strong stories. So there's a lot going on, and I feel like that kind of appeals to everybody. Like, I mean, hey, if Lovecraft, was alive today and he had copyrights, he'd be like a multimillionaire because so many people really, they delve into his vibe. They really love it. And I think it's that whole like strong storytelling thing. It might have like a darker tint to it. Maybe some people prefer the darker tint, but definitely I think that's what brings things forward.
Sure. I did read a lot of Stephen King and still do whenever I get the chance. And people will tell me like, he's a horror master. And I'm like, that's not what I'm seeing here. Because I don't get scared, I don't get creeped out. I get drawn into the drama and the way that he has a brilliant way of showing the perspective of every character and displaying how whatever they're doing, no matter how good or evil, makes sense from their point of view.
Yeah,
That
I
he's a
think
master of
he's
that.
actually underrated. Like he calls himself the literary equivalent of a Big Mac and fries.
Hmm.
Like, dude, I mean, it's great to have humility, but I do think that he has like his strongest thing is like he makes really believable characters.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you're not dependent on like gory flash bang, in your face sort of stuff. It's like you believe that that person thinks that way, and it led them to go down that path.
And the best example of that I can think of is when you read the way he writes children,
Yeah.
because you very much believe that this is the perspective of a child, not an adult trying to speak like a child. And most authors do not hit that mark.
No, I agree with you 100%. And like one thing I really didn't like is I hate when people do quote young adult. It's like they dumb it down for the adult audience.
Mm-hmm.
Like for instance, it's throwing something out there. I'm not really throwing shade on it, but like the Hunger Games. Like I read all the books, and like it's a very involved, well thought out story. I mean, they did kind of rip the concept off from a Japanese movie, but that aside, you know, um, it I think it's well done, but they didn't need to dumb it down. Like I've talked to other authors, and when they write something for the young adult market, they're like, "I'm just gonna do it as if it was said through the words of kids, through their mouth. Like we're not gonna like dumb down the concepts because we're like, yeah, people of that age won't understand it. Or just see it like through their eyes." And I feel like this is a better approach.
And one of the dirty little secrets of the literary market is that the young adult genre is considered to be a very profitable genre, but also one that doesn't have very distinguished readers. Uh, and I think that's wrong. I disagree with that, but that's the logic that's used. So you'll have cases where somebody tries to pitch a novel aimed at the adult market and it doesn't fly. Nobody picks it up. So an agent will get it and say, let's retool this as a young adult novel. As long as it doesn't have any graphic language or violence or sex, if we can say it's safe for that market, we can try to respin that, even if it was never intended to be such. And so you have all these authors selling books to teenagers who that book was not intended for that audience, and everybody's being done a disservice because of this.
Right. No, it makes me wonder if that's what happened with the Hunger Games,
I believe,
because
yeah, I don't know for
that
sure, but I
is a
bet.
clever story, and it feels like it kind of went through and they simplified it a little bit. But like going back to Stephen King, like you read some of his earlier stuff, which I think is his strongest stuff. You read that earlier stuff, and you're like, it doesn't feel like it's talking down to you, but it doesn't feel like overly complex either. So I remember reading a lot of this stuff as a kid, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. I wasn't like, oh, where's my dictionary? I used to do that. I used to like have a dictionary next to me so I could always look at words, but I didn't have to with him. It's like he has a way of like eloquently talking to you without like using all these like I call it just as like exaggeration, highfalutin words. Like that they kind of like all to use that florid language and nobody will understand. No, he talks to you, but his concepts aren't retarded.
Hmm. I Most of the time when I read a book, I just put myself in the scene and I read the words and I get involved in it and I kind of do a theater of the mind aspect of it. I just, basically create the story in my head. With Stephen King stuff, somehow I almost always get the impression that he's literally sitting there next to me reading the story to me. It's like I have that connection
Yeah,
that
no,
he
that's a
is
good
telling a
observation.
story.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's a
no,
very
I
personal
agree.
style. Yeah, and I love that for that.
Yeah, it's like he brings you into his world. So
Hmm.
it's almost like you're kind of experiencing it with him as opposed to like he's just going to tell you what's going on.
Yeah, and it's a gift, and it makes him very special in a very singular way. And like I said, there are a lot of authors I whose work I love. I had Candace Cade on a couple weeks ago, and her stories are very vivid. They're very theatrical. You can almost paint a movie in your head of the way it's going because a lot of the stuff she's doing is it draws parallels to modern anime, modern thrillers, and that's great. It's by design. King, on the other hand, really seems like this old guy sitting around a fire who knows that he's drawing you in because,
Telling you tales, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So I
He
mean,
also, I think, like I remember when they wrote his earlier stuff, and he was a lot younger when he wrote it. Like to me, it's like it didn't feel like an old man because I was younger then, he was younger then, but it felt like it was like developed by like well developed, you know. So it didn't feel like ancient, but it felt well developed. And I think that style is kind of has gone more into the flash bang pow, will just impress you with imagery and shock, you know. So I think in a way that kind of like makes him older just because over time the writing style changed a little bit. Not that he's irrelevant, because I mean I think he's still relevant.
mhm. But you're just seeing that at some point, the world there's more added to the genre, and we can be thankful that the genre has grown so big in the last, in Stephen King's time, in our time,
Right.
that we're
Well,
not talking about.
there were contemporaries of Lovecraft, and like I'm a big Lovecraft fan. He died poor. In fact, he died from cancer, and he had cancer for 4 months before he could even afford to go to the doctor. You know, it's like nowadays he'd be a multimillionaire. You know, but I think it was the same thing when Stephen King broke out. There weren't that many horror writers. I mean, now they're everywhere. But it's like, you know, that stuff has grown. It grew from like in Lovecraft's time when you basically made no money doing horror. Like you had people that like he like looked up to, like the guy who wrote The King of Yellow. He looked up to, but that guy did a few great horror stories. Then started writing like what now reads like very stilted romance novels because that's where the money was. So now there is money in it.
Mhm. Like, if you were saying Stephen King's been referred to as a literary Big Mac, your book here, Down Highways, would be more like the literary version of an artisanal pastry. I mean, it's something you've got to go to a special guy on the other end of town to get it, and he's only working Tuesdays and Thursdays, but damn, is that pastry worth it? Okay. And that would not exist if we didn't have the growth in the market that's happened between when Stephen King got a start and where we are right now. That
I
pastry
agree.
wouldn't be a
Yeah.
thing.
I think he broke a lot of boundaries. Like he made people go, wait a minute, you can tell a good story. Because before that, horror was kind of like the, you know, I mean, you know, no slag on them, but it was like kind of like the old school monster thing, like the Frankenstein, the creature from Black Lagoon, sort of like bang, pow. It's like, and if you look at it, a lot of the stuff, it's like kind of a morality tale. Like you do drugs, then Jason kills you. You have sex, then Jason kills you. You know, so like he went from that to like, you know, why don't I tell complex stories? And then I think people really started taking it more seriously.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm the kind of person who will watch the Universal monster movies because they're movies, because
Right.
I love filmmaking, because I love seeing the early attempts to adapt literature onto the screen and the way they would completely miss the point sometimes. That was,
Oh, the framing is brilliant. Like the light and the tone and
yeah,
all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, and it's on an artistic level, it's great. Do I find it creepy? No, I find it beautiful.
Mm.
Because we're talking about the first attempt to bring something into a moving picture, which was such a new idea for that length of time.
Right.
So,
Well, it's also kind of hard to find that stuff creepy when now you have like Art the Cloud sawing people in half and stuff.
mhm,
You're like, they've just gone so far with it now. You're like, that feels old.
sure, but it's a case of you want that aesthetic because it feels real in a way that
Right.
sometimes the CG doesn't.
Yeah.
And for me, that's always going to be something that it's believable because I know that face really existed, that costume really existed, even if it didn't look that way in real life. Somebody had to make that.
Right. Well, even if you look at like the early sci-fi stuff, like Star Trek and Star Wars, where they have like sheet of construction paper and they punch holes in it for the stars, you know,
Hmm.
but it's like all that stuff was like done not with CGI because they didn't even have CGI, so they're all practical effects. Like if you look at like the Thing and like Dawn of the Dead, like all the like early gore and stuff, to me that's all kind of reads like more realistic.
I agree. I very much agree. Just because your brain doesn't have to take the extra step to convince you that this is real or isn't real. It's like you know what it is, and you I think the barrier to suspend disbelief is lower there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I might have to fight people on this, but I think it's real.
Well,
So
I remember like the bad old days when CGI first came in. Like if you saw the Spawn movie with like
uh-huh.
the cape, and you're like, "Oh, that CGI is so bad." So it has gotten better, but like you shouldn't rely on that.
Yeah. And I
That's
mean
another topic for another day, I'm sure.
it really is. And I don't want to be ragging on CGI because it does have its place and it's done some wonderful things. But I'm saying that you appreciate the way things are made and you appreciate the craftsmanship that goes into something. And that's why I'm encouraging people to check out your work here because it's literally a work of craftsmanship.
Oh,
It's a
thank
very
you.
specific design to bring out a collection of stories. And I'm a sucker for anthology fiction. I don't
Okay.
think that's as popular as it should be because I think that the market wants to have bite-sized stories told by expert storytellers. And if it's not your thing, you could move right on to the next one. I bet if somebody picks up your book, they're not necessarily going to find every single one be a banger for them, but there might be one that hits home like crazy.
Oh, I agree. And like I remember when they first put out a collection of short stories, and I remember publishers like, well, collections of short stories don't sell as well as novels. You know, I was like, okay. I mean, I kind of understand why, and that like you get wrapped up in something and then it's over, and like now you have to reboot and start over. But some of the greatest stuff, like I don't know if you read Clive Barker's Books of Blood,
No,
like
sorry.
it's Clive Barker's Books of Blood, like Rawhead Rex and Tales of Cities and the Yak and the Yak. They're really good stories. So like most of them have been adapted into movies or like TV shows or whatever by now, but they're all very strong stories. And I understand you got to reboot between every one, but especially in retrospective, I really like that. Whereas like if you get a novel, it's like I kind of the same where like if I start, I wanted to try and finish it, but you'll be like 130 pages in, you're like, dude, it's just going nowhere.
And that I feel that sometimes too. I have a big stack of Asimov's magazines next to my bed.
Mm,
And I'll get through one, and sometimes like I'll get 10 pages into a story, and it's like not doing it for me. You
right.
give yourself permission to move on to the next one because it does not every single one has to work for you. Just play with it a little bit. That's your right as a reader. It's the
I
privilege of being a
I
reader.
do say though that they should give stuff a chance because a lot of people that are like, yeah, it didn't grab me in the first few pages, so I'm out. Like, dude, just read a couple chapters.
Sure. And I will always say if it didn't grab you now, come back to it in a year.
Right.
Sometimes it's just the frame of mind you're in. It's not the story, it's just where you are in life. And
It's
that
true. Yeah, that's totally true. Yeah.
I've had cases where I've found something, a story didn't grab me, but I went through something, I reread that story, it's like, oh, okay, now I get it.
Now all of a sudden it makes a lot more sense, a lot more
Mhm.
personable. Yeah.
Right, right. Well, Dan, I want to thank you so much for being here, and I want to make sure people can follow your adventures on the web and check out your Kickstarter. I'm going to put the link to the Kickstarter in the show notes on my website, but where can people follow what you're doing day to day?
Well, I have a website. It's super simple. It's danhenk.com. So DNHENK. A lot of people get my last name wrong. I mean, it's a weird German last name, but you know, I have all my stuff up there. I have like a daily blog where I talk about it. I post like all my art projects and stuff. But yeah, I do a lot of stuff like a podcast, like art for books, art for magazines, art for bands. So just check my stuff out and obviously sign up for my Kickstarter.
Awesome, awesome. Well, Dan, I'm looking forward to this, and you're welcome back anytime to talk about more of your book. I'd like to check out that podcast too.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks for having me.
Glad to have you.